This is The Final Word. It's The Final Word Weekly. It's Geoff Lemon and Adam Collins together to talk about the week in the world of cricket. Plenty going on this week. The Australia-South Africa one-day international series finished up. So did Cheteshwar Pujara as an Indian cricketer, or at least as someone who's eligible to be an Indian cricketer. Ravichandran Ashwin retired from the IPL. We've got some Women's World Cup information, both with the squads and with some of the shambolic organisation that's been going on. A little bit of the 100 and a few other bits and pieces over the course of a show that will have a fair few things in it because it always does. Hello, Adam. We're getting together after our week in Scotland and all the roaming around that we did from Wormsley down in England all the way up to Edinburgh, the games that we played up there, and then finally getting a moment to catch our breath.
Yep, great to see down the line. You've got the Final Word microphone sock. Which is a great addition. Thanks, Tubes, for sorting those out. But yeah, it's an emblem of the planning we're doing for the future. Yeah, we're getting there slowly but surely on these things. I can only actually hear you through one ear because it's still school holidays here, which is why I've been kind of dipping in and out with Winnie stuff in the last couple of days, and I've collected an ear infection, off her or another one of the many children I've had sort of in my orbit at various play dates and whatever else, and on holiday in Spain with them before that. So it's been good, though. We went to Camden Town this morning because Winnie is, at the moment, obsessed with Amy Winehouse because, well, basically my choir.
Really?
Yeah, she is. Back to Black's one of our choir songs. Yeah, well, Back to Black's one of our choir songs. And therefore Winnie's got some, shall we say, similar neurological tendencies to me. Okay. And when she gets interested in something, she gets very interested in it. And at the moment, but
that's usually been within a sort of, I mean, as somebody who's not a haver of children, I still have some understanding of how they work. And something like a kid getting obsessed with Bluey or a kid getting obsessed with Frozen, I'm like, I get that. 5-year-old getting obsessed with Amy Winehouse, I'm like, good. It's culturally broadening. It's interesting. There's a whole story attached. There's a lot to learn, which possibly she shouldn't be learning a lot of the Amy Winehouse story until a more advanced age, I'd suggest. But
yeah, she's pretty keen to know. Like she's quite keen to know all the details of the death and so on. So we've been kind of doing that in a subtle way. But yeah, there's a sculpture there.
She was obsessed with the Queen dying, wasn't she?
Well, she was telling anyone who'd listened that Elizabeth had died months after the fact. It's Sandra Sully stuff. But yeah, so look, the sculpture there at Camden Market was a nice thing for her to go to this morning. She was fascinated in how small, it's to size, the sculpture, how small she was. I'm like, that's kind of part of it. Her body wasn't that resilient. She was as the years went on, was quite beaten up by the excesses of her life, you could say.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I've been doing. In the middle of all that, I took her to a meeting. I've got this idea. This won't surprise you, nor will it surprise any of our audience, for a new cricket ground not far from where I live. There's a patch of there's an unused playing field, basically. I'm like, well, that should be, for lots of different reasons, a cricket ground. And I went and met with the trust this morning and took Winnie along to that. So she's getting a broader school holidays than what we might have expected. But it's been good. I've enjoyed our first proper 6-week break with a school kid. There'll be many of them when obviously when Peggy joins there at school in a couple of years, and these weeks are more complicated but more nourishing too.
Okay, so you're getting her interested in singers with a colourful life story, but also in administration, sporting administration. The kind of people who sign up to be trustees and to look after clubs are an admirable species. Like the ones we met at playing Watsonian up in Edinburgh.
Yes, that's right.
Remarkable ground at Carlton Cricket Club.
Well, that's right. So we did that game at Carlton. I loved that story time, which we were dipping in and out of last week with Glenn Kenny Finkeld and Sean McGiven. First time he's been properly on the show. But yeah, it was a pretty good game too. We got bowled out cheaply because we collapsed. I think we might have been defending 150-ish, in a 20-over game. Or a 30-over game.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, I don't think there was no conjecture over how many runs were made in the first innings. There is definitely still some conjecture over how many runs were made in the second innings. However, the long and the short of it is that we've agreed that we won by 3 runs. I reckon we won by 1 run. Others think it was a tie. It's all good. We got the job done. And I just wanted to publicly thank our mate JP, Johnny Potton, for getting that game up 2 years in a row with Watsonian. They're a great club. They won on the weekend, undefeated season. They're through to the the playoff. If they win that game,
as in their first grade
team. Yeah, and if they win the other side, I can't quite remember how it works, but they play like a championship playoff game, and if they get over the line there, they're into the premiership. So that's a cool thing for a famous Scottish club, which Kim Hughes plays for them, right? Like they go a long way back to have a lot of great people playing for them across the journey. Thanks also to Steve Baxter, who picked up his camera for the third time he'd been to Edinburgh and didn't put it down. Every game was photographed in enormous detail. There's some terrific pictures there of not just Wormsley, but the 3 games we played up in Scotland. I'm sure Steve will pass them on if you want to see us doing our thing last week in Scotland. And that also tended to that drawing of me, which Bill Fuller sent through overnight, which is a picture of me smiling when bowling last week, which has been turned into a drawing. And I'm not sure it necessarily is flattering to me as such, but maybe I just need to accept that that's the way my face looks in 2025. I don't know.
I think it's Bill's artistic style. I think Bill would, I might describe it as a brutalist style. He draws out, he accentuates characteristics, and in a way which isn't necessarily like I'd like to see him do a Trump portrait just to see what the response would be, that kind of thing. But it's about, I don't know, stripping away the softer parts to reveal something underneath, to reveal something of the character underneath. I think that's it's a interrogative artistic style. That's how I'd describe Bill.
That's well described. I should mention also Dan Kirk, who got the team together last week. He's a Final Word listener, has been for a long time. So thank you, Dan, for making that all possible. So that's our Scotland adventure for 2025 all done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it wrapped up. It was a great time, and I'm glad that we got to have those days on the road and have those moments. Being part of a touring team is a pretty fun thing to do.
It is,
which is what the Australians and the South Africans have been doing in their top end adventure. Darwin, Cairns, Mackay, so on and so on. An odd ending to that ODI series. So South Africa won the first 2 games, making big-ish but not massive, decent scores, just under 300 both times, and then bowled out Australia for under 200 both times. Just kept the pressure on, kept the cosh on, won the series, and then rocked up for the game that wouldn't affect the destination of the trophy, and got 430 pounded on against them, the first time Mitch Marsh has ever elected to bat on winning the toss. And he's won a lot of tosses too in his time captaining Australia in 20 over or 50 over cricket. So 31, I believe it was, that they piled up. South Africa got nowhere near it in the end. Must have been their biggest runs defeat to Australia. It was by a margin of about, I think they lost by 280-ish, which was their biggest defeat to Australia by about 130 runs, if the stats that I looked up were correct. And then got presented with the trophy. So then they had to do their celebration bit, because they didn't get the trophy after the 2-0. It's the end of the series. Oh, you won the series. Well done. And they had to do the smiling celebration after they've just been annihilated in the third game. It's a weird thing.
But we're used to that. I was thinking about this recently. So there was a really good clip that went up last night from the 1993 Ashes, where England brought in a brand new bowling attack for the final test at the Oval and beat Australia fairly handily. Angus Fraser, Devon Malcolm, Steve Watkins, Phil Tufnell, I reckon. Anyway, so they do the job there, but Australia then do the sort of ceremonial passing of the urn as the losing team. 2015, that happened when Australia won the final test but didn't win the urn. 2019, it happened where England won the final test and Australia won. And there are various examples of this. So add another one to the list.
Yeah, I mean, you do see it at the end of series, but rarely with that. That's a historic defeat to bring it up on. But it was a curious kind of game, that last one. The top 3 all made hundreds, which has only ever happened once in a one-day international before. So,
let me guess. 2015 World Cup. Maybe.
When was it? I know what the teams are, but I can't
South
remember
Africa
exactly
Island.
When it was. It is South Africa.
Yeah, it's the one. It was at Monaco. We've done a nerd pledge on this before. It was when they made 400 plus. I think Faf got 100. And Riley Rousseau. I want to guess Riley Rousseau. Jumps out for some reason. Anyway, before he went cold pack.
Travis had 142, which he needed because he looked scratchy as all get out the last. Through that series and a little bit before that. Marsh made an even 100, and then Cam Green came in 118 not out from 55 balls, second fastest ODI 100 after Glenn Maxwell's one.
bit going on there. I love that he was declining singles with Alex Carey down the other end. And that's a fairly confident young man in Cameron Green saying, no, acknowledging how good a player Carey is. You'd expect it if it were, 8, 9, 10, 11 or something. But Cameron Green batting up the list, and I think Carey was at 5, and say, no, I'll take it from here, hitting 3 sixes the next 3 balls. So it absolutely was the right decision, but not something you'd expect, but probably a sign of just a little subtle nod to where he thinks his game's at, which is a good thing, given he spent a long time out of the Aussie team. Of course, he's returned recently, but sort of feeling more established. I don't think he would have been doing that 2 or 3 years ago.
I think it's also coming from some backroom intervention to get them to think about matchups more. So we saw one in the T20 series that wasn't quite as pronounced because it was Maxwell batting with Ben Dwarshuis.
Right.
But Dwarshuis can hit sixes and has hit plenty of them. It's not like he's not a hitter. He was batting at 8 in that side. But Maxwell said afterwards, I was declining singles not because he can't hit, but because I had the better matchup given the boundary length and the bowler, that I needed to be facing the bowling in that over. I was happy for him to face the bowling in the next over, but I wanted those deliveries for myself. And Green was the same kind of thing because he was facing Mutasami, who's the left-arm spinner who doesn't turn it a whole lot. And basically Green, Alex Carey can hit sixes as well and has and does and will. And he was promoted. Labuschagne got bumped down the order, which was kind of funny in and of itself. He was headed for a TFC before he took a couple of catches late in the chase. But there was the reasoning from Green was that this is the better matchup than the left-hander facing this player, given the way the boundaries are. I'm the one who can hit sixes off him. So essentially he was going, well, the bowler wants to give me a single. So if the bowler wants to give me a single, I shouldn't take it. But you're right that he probably wouldn't have had the confidence to do that a while back, whereas now he does, and obviously different formats and all the rest of it, but it does bode well. If he is to bat 3 during the Ashes, then it might just help him settle in a bit more.
Yeah. And speaking of sand groping all-rounders, Cooper Connolly's fifers, that's a real thing. I know that 4 of them were caught in the deep and whatever, but I think that if he wishes to play international cricket,
it got better as it went on.
Sure, but I mean, it's just more like the landmark. It's kind of it doesn't matter how you get him; it's in the book kind of thing. I think just him taking an international fifer. He spoke in the build up to this series about CA have been and the powers that be have been pretty clear with him that his bowling's going to have to be a bigger part of the overall offering for him. Of course, he's so young; he's 21, right? So let's keep it all in perspective, right? But in the post Maxwell world, remembering that Maxwell's importance as a bowler has grown in the last 4 or 5 years. They're looking for someone who could theoretically open the bowling in short form cricket, bowling spin, and also batting in the top 5. Well, that's going to be Connolly. It feels that way anyway. So, important for him to just, I guess, check that box at international fifer and played a role. I know there's enormous scoreboard pressure, but, still got to take him and so on. And there he is. And that'll be the next challenge for that young man.
Yeah, you won't get too many better opportunities to take one than defending 400 and coming on once a few from the top order have already gone.
Without making this about me, and I don't intend to, but I had a very similar situation on Sunday in the 8th of 11. I played 8 games in 11 days, and I came on with it was Monday, the bank holiday, the very end. It ended up taking 3 wickets in 12 balls to win the game. It's not getting much easier than that. You know what I mean?
No.
Like you're coming on it. If you don't take the wickets, it's more of a, that's more the standout moment. Like Connolly was bowling at a team that were ready to get on the plane that there was reporting that was there WhatsApps that were released or the social media posts or something like that they were ready to go home. They were the team that wanted to get in the bar and wanted to get a jug immediately, is what we had on Monday. And that's okay. That's part of the game as well.
Yeah. And when the opposing spinner is running past one to give you a stumping, it gives you a sense of the way that things are panning out. But yeah, Connolly, I'm bullish about his batting. I'm excited about his batting. I think they've gone about him a bit backwards in that there are a bunch of games he's been picked for where he hasn't batted, and that's the time in the middle that I want to see him getting. Whereas I don't really see what makes people have faith in his bowling so much. So he did improve through that spell, but he's done very little. He's done more with the bat. He's shown more promise with the bat domestically than with the ball. But they seem to be backing him as a bowling all rounder, which is confusing in terms of how Australian management sees him. making a path in the team. But I want to see him get more opportunity with the bat, because I think that's where he's got to get his confidence and really make his spot. The other bit of preparatory game stuff going on was Australia A played India A in the women's in a 4-dayer, which is awesome, because we've been wanting more long form women's cricket. They played that at AB Field, so there'll be an Australia-India women's test at the end of the home summer in February. This wasn't really preparation for that, because there aren't many players who in these A games who would be playing in that test match, but it shows that at least there's thinking that down the line there will hopefully be more test matches between these teams, and it'll become a bit more frequent. So quite a good game in the end. India A made 299 and then 286, batting first and third. Shefali Verma would have been the biggest name in these games. She made 35 and then 52, so had a decent run out. And then Sienna Ginger made a ton for Australia A at number 7. Nicole Fulton made 54. And Australia ended up needing 283 to win and ran it down with 6 wickets to spare in the end. So really impressive performance batting last. Rachel Treneman, Talia Wilson, Maddie Dark, Annika Leroyd all made substantial runs in that chase and did it comfortably in the end. It's good to see that they're actually out there and giving the opportunity to play a proper 4-day fixture.
Yeah, it's a couple of excellent 4-day games that Australia's women have played this year for Australia A. Like, it's no exaggeration now to say for a decade we've been crying out for this on the show about there being the opportunity for women to play multi-day cricket that isn't just a one-off test match, and the players have said it repeatedly as well. And look, we're a step short of them implementing a 3-day competition that marries up with the WNCL. That'd be the ultimate objective here, I think, from a lot of players' perspectives, to find a way, given they're all on full-time contracts, to
even if it were once a season, you play 5 matches against the other states.
Yeah, I would say you split it in 2 groups, given that they've got the ACT Meteors are their own entity, and there would be ways of doing this where you play a few 3-day games and then a final or something like that to round it off. And that I'm not saying it would be part of the WNCL's. You wouldn't want to mess with the integrity of the one-day tournament, but there is a way of doing this, right? So this is one step, more Australia A games, and not just having the test matches, and sometimes like a warm-up game or an intra-squad game that's played over a few days, usually with a pink ball, because oftentimes the women's test matches have been day-nighters. But yeah, there was that England Day Australia A game in, it must have been February, which was just after the women's Ashes, which went all the way to the final over, where Australia won a thrilling match, and they've done so again here, chasing down 283. So a step in the right direction, and a good chance to see that generation next coming through, and take someone like Maitland Brown, who we have talked about repeatedly on the show, who clearly has got this extraordinary ceiling and played a lot for Australia, but how often has she played a multi-day game? You know what I mean? So this is where that will start to hopefully pay dividends for Australian cricket in the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and seeing something like that delivery that Georgia Prestwich bowled that curled back and back through the gate, a magnificent piece of bowling, doing something like that is the kind of thing that then tells that player, I'm somebody who can do this. I'm somebody who can step up to this next level, this other format as well. The Australian men's bowling depth got some issues there. So Spencer Johnson's going to have some more time out of the game. They describe it as back soreness rather than something particularly needing surgery or other really intensive treatment, but he's had a fair bit of this kind of thing. He's 29 years old and he's missed a lot of cricket and has played very little red ball cricket. And then Lance Morris will miss a lot with a very intensive surgery coming up. He's going to get that back fusing kind of surgery that James Pattinson had and that Cameron Green had more recently, in the hope that he can put this problem behind him once and for all and actually be able to bowl consistently for a number of seasons back to back.
And so he's 27 now, Lance Morris. So it's probably the right time to do it if he's had these ongoing, and he's had these ongoing issues with stressies, to try and nip it in the butt. Jason Berendorf, Shane Bond originally in Christchurch. We spoke to James Pattinson, interviewed him in 2019 about how brutal the whole thing is. And of course, Cameron Green is 12 months out of bowling entirely, and they're expecting the same here for Lance Morris. So he would have been, I'm not sure whether he, in the depth chart where he sits, if you accept that there's the big 3, then there's Scott Boland. I'm not sure who sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 are, but he'd be in that. As would Spencer Johnson.
Probably depends on right arm, left arm, I guess. Well,
yeah, true.
Johnson would be the likely one if Starc were missing.
And Johnson's very open about wanting to be a Test cricketer. So even though Johnson's body of work is primarily with the white ball, he looks like a Test cricketer when he runs in, shaping it around, doesn't he? And he's big and he's quick and so on. So, even though with Johnson, it's you're right. No surgery, no dramas. It's soreness. He'll be back for the season proper. They'll be without Morris. It's been described as a fast bowling crisis in one newspaper headline I saw a couple of days ago. Not sure you can describe it as that when you've got the big three plus
when
Boland.
the four best
bowlers in the world
are all fit and happy.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone over this many times, but the extraordinary situation that Australia find themselves in, that their big three or their big four, if you want to include Boland, all at the same time have all never been better. That's daunting for England, no matter how you frame it. I heard Hazlewood interviewed yesterday talking about England's batting, and he used some superlatives to describe them, and fair enough at their best. Clearly, they've done extraordinary things in the last 3 years. But Cummins, Starc, Hazlewood, all at the peak of their powers, all at the same time, all fit and all prepped for this series. That's going to be daunting for, I would imagine, Crawley and Pope the most, and the most vulnerable to the type of bowling that they excel with. Excuse me as my phone rings and I cancel it. You think after 10 years I'd remember to do that before we started recording it. Yep, Geoff. That's the challenge for England, and how they choose to go about confronting it will be fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's a lot riding on that idea of, can they push those bowlers deeper into the game? Because historically, there have been a number of teams who've been able to get on top of them if they're able to make them bowl enough, and that bowling attack wins games when they're able to dominate early and manage their overs. But they do start to tire out, as any bowlers do. But there's been quite a pronounced drop off in a number of tests that those three particularly have played.
Yeah, I actually should add to what I said before, because I can see already people yelling down the screen. But what about 2023? What about what Zach Crawley did to Australia then? Different trying to do it in those conditions, in those circumstances. It's like we've flipped the traditional perception of pitches. Like in 23, as it's been in England for quite a long time now, due to drainage and other reasons, they're quite flat. Like from the get-go, they're flat pitches. In Australia, the first, 2.5 days, it's bloody difficult. And that's borne out in the Shield data. And certainly the test match games that we've covered in the last 4 or 5 years as well. The Border Gavaskar case in point. Start of a test match, it's a nightmare to bat in Australia right now. The steel reinforced kookaburras, the more live grass left on the pitch, it's all part of a bigger picture about how difficult it's been for top order players. It's why Shield numbers have gone down commensurate to, relative to what they had before, sorry. So that's what I mean precisely. It's not about beating up those big three on flatties. It's about doing it on pitches that will be very, very lively.
Yes, exactly that. And I have a feeling increasingly, and this is based on absolutely nothing, I increasingly think that this will be it for Starc. I just think he'll wrap up after Sydney. Like, I think with him, given that Elisa Healy's likely to go after the 50 over World Cup, that's sort of not public, but it's basically assumed and seems very likely. And, and given that they've got a life to live together, presumably they want to look to start a family at some point. It seems like the right time, and he seems like a practical enough character to not be too entranced by the romance of looking to go to England again and all the rest of it. Like, I think he's the less likely sort of character to be sucked into the story of all of that, and the more likely one to say, I've had fun, I've had a good run, let's wrap it up at Sydney and see you later. And so I'll be watching the test this summer with the expectation that this is the last hurrah for that three, or that four if you include Lyon, who, if they play all 5 this summer, will have played almost 40 test matches together as a bowling attack of 4, which is absolutely nuts. Obviously, a long way to go with injury and all the rest of it. But yeah, that may not be the case, but it feels to me like that's probably how it'll go.
I reckon if he wasn't bowling so well, you know what I mean? If he were like, the thing with Starc is he's getting better every year. So that's the tricky bit. Like, it's hard to walk away when you're at the peak of your powers. And that 2027 swing will be alluring, right? The idea of going to India, World Test Championship cycle ends, going to England. If they can keep the train on the tracks, long way to go. You're right. World Cup, long way to go. Obviously, a very long way to go. But there is a world where I think that the three of them try and stick together and have one more, cycle in World Test terms. We'll see, I guess. Just on quicks, by the way, Mark Wood is going to play for Durham, which is good. He's going to prove his fitness by playing some county cricket at the back end of the season. Durham will need him too. They're far from safe in Division 1. So that's his platform for the Ashes, which makes sense to me. And I think we all want to see a fit and firing Mark Wood. He was probably the one England player off the top of my head who increased his standing as an international player the last time they were in Australia 4 years ago. He bowled quickly, he moved the ball around, and he showed that he had the ticker for it. So hopefully Mark Wood gets to Perth and beyond. And just quickly on England quicks as well, Ken Shuttleworth passed away this week at age 80, who's been a subject on Storytime before, Geoff. He knows what it takes to win in Australia. Of course, he made his debut in Oz in 1970-71, where he played a couple of test matches at the start of that successful series in Raymond Illingworth's team. Pfeiffer on debut at Brisbane. Similarities to Steve Finn, who's got a book coming out, by the way. Our mate Finney, he and Matt Roller have written the book about Steve Finn's Ashes experiences and all the rest of it. But Shuttleworth played the first 2 test matches of 70-71, then was jettisoned despite having pretty good numbers, like Finney in 2010-11. But yeah, 2 tests there, 5 in total, over 500 first-class wickets with a body that didn't always behave. And England's first ever one-day international wicket as well. Quiz question, Geoff, who do you reckon it would have been? Who was the first Australian to fall in that one day at Melbourne?
First Australian to get out in
New Year's Day, 1971.
Ian Redpath?
Close, same generation, indeed, same state, and both passed away this year. It was Keith Stackpole.
Stacky?
Yeah, Stacky, and it was weirdly caught and bowled. Caught and bowled was the wicket. So, yeah, and Shuttleworth stayed in the game. Many years later, he came back and performed duties as a first-class umpire at the end of his professional career in marketing. So, our best to everyone in Lancashire cricket who will be feeling that passing this week.
Yeah, one of those names when you spend a lot of time, as we do, reading a lot of 1970s scorecards, there are names that stand out, and a lot of those that have left us in the last 12 months or so. And yeah, the Mark Wood bit, you just want to see him in Perth. That's so much of it is about. I want to see him bowl in Perth and Brisbane. Like he could skip Adelaide maybe, but those. The possibilities of those 2 games and how much that would bring to the series in the first 3 tests while it's live. Yeah, it's goosebumpy.
He's got the ability to have like a Bumrah-esque influence on the first test. If you think about Perth last year and the way Wood can do that, he's got that kind of spell in him. So yeah, I agree. For the sake of the series, and I was writing about this in Wisdom in the magazine this month, something to the effect of it would be very, very funny if England capitulated and it was like basket case to basket case within one Ashes cycle. That'd be amusing, but none of us want that. We all want I think I say we, people who are close to the game and are there a lot. We're crying out for a hyper competitive Ashes series in Australia for the first time in over 40 years. That would be an amazing thing to cover. Mark would be central to anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had enough comedy Ashes series.
Yeah.
So, watching the same thing play out again would, it'd be funny to an extent. But we want something new. We want fresh material. We should go to a break. We've got a lot of India-related stuff after that break, including one of the big sponsors behind Indian cricket going down during the week, as well as the other things that I presaged off the top. Before we do that, Maurice Blackburn, we should talk about them, the lifeblood of this show at the moment, along with the patron supporters.
Yeah, indeed. And we've been telling you of the work they do, the important work they do. And one such client by the name of Casey, who was struggling with anxiety, depression and PTSD, having experienced domestic violence following a bitter divorce, and trying to support her children, her mental health declined rapidly to the point where she could no longer work as a nurse. Now, she was aware that she had TPD cover and lodged her own TPD claim, but the insurer, a common theme here, Geoff, the insurer pushed back. So Maurice Blackburn took over the claim, argued that because of her unique situation and the fact that she lacked insight about her own mental health condition, that there was this delay in seeking treatment, which shouldn't prejudice the claim. The insurer ultimately agreed to pay the lump sum, which was over $250,000, and they pursued Maurice Blackburn, that is another $50,000 on top in interest because of the insurer's unreasonable delays. That enabled Casey to achieve financial stability secure permanent and safe housing for herself and her children, and importantly, allowed her to access additional private mental health treatment, which she couldn't otherwise afford. So, again, all reflective of the work that Maurice Blackburn do on behalf of working people. Australia's number one plaintiff law firm. Much of that work is on that no-win, no-fee basis, and we're always proud to be in association with Maurice Blackburn as a principal partner on The Final Word.
We'll be back in just a moment. It is The Final Word. It's season 18. It's episode 30 as we move towards September, the end of August. So we've got another month or so, I suppose, before we flip to another southern season. Once again, we'll have to figure out how we decide when the end of that is. I suppose it'll be after the last county championship round.
Yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't really considered when our season will end, but the championship ends, I think, a month today. Is it the 28th of September, the final day of the final round? Something like that.
Feels right.
My season will continue into October. Why wouldn't it? But for most people, normal people, it'll end sometime in September. Throughout this season, we've been working with Newbrew as well, which is terrific. They had that new product bag at Wormsley, which was called the Discovery Pack. So that has 6 different flavors of the Advantage range in a 10 sachet bundle. So the Cherry Surge, the Berry Fusion, which I love, Apple Pie High, Perfectly Peach, which I've got a bottle of right now, Pineapple Crush, Strawberry Lemonade, another one of my favorites. So that's £19.95, which is on discount at the moment. And that's all on that Final Word page, so newbrew.com/TFW. It's added to the cricket range. Go there, links in the show notes. Easy to work out from there which one you like best. And one more thing on Newbrew, by the way, we gave away that Kohli bat at Wormsley last week, and the gloves and the bat case and whatever else. It was won by Dave Hiscox, who works at Wormsley. He, bought a ticket for the raffle on the day to be in the running to win the Kohli bat by being involved with Newbrew. And we've received a photo from Dave during the week via Wormsley. He's mounted the bat and the gloves above his massive television already. And the Newbrew pack is sitting on the shelf there with the Kohli bat cover. So if I were Dave, given all the effort that's gone on to getting that bat purchased and sold and all the rest of it, I'd probably use it. But I can also see why, being such a beautiful piece of wood, that he might want to, look at it on a regular basis as well. So there you go. That's how that all finished off.
I reckon you get it knocked in, then you mount it. You can leave it up there for a few years, but at some point it's got to come down. It's like the sword above the fireplace in some sort of medieval epic. At some point you've got to take down the sword and take it into combat and see what it can do. Or, when the right person comes along, when the person who can take it down off the wall arrives, then that'll be the thing that'll change their cricketing life.
So, reminder then from off the top, the Discovery Pack, it's all there, $19.95, newbrew.com/TFW. Advantage is the one that I drink all the time. So, as I say, I've literally got one in my hand right now, the peach and the strawberry lemonade and the berry fusion are the ones that I go for. But that pack has all of them, and you can find the one you like best and go from there.
Yep, and have a look into the potential benefits as well, what it might be able to do for you and what might suit you. Right. Cheteshwar Pujara. Let's talk about one of our favourites. He's not going to Greg Matthews it. He's not going to remain available for the rest of his life. He hasn't been in Indian sides lately. And you know what? He could have been. He probably wouldn't have contributed any less at number 3 during the last English summer than that combination of Sai Sudarshan and Karan Nair. I reckon he would have pulled out an innings somewhere or other along the line to influence a match here or there, particularly with all that experience playing in England in county cricket the last few years. But he's formally made himself unavailable for national duties going forward, which should mean that he's freed up to do whatever he wants professionally, even if he wasn't before. I guess he wasn't in the IPL before, so there probably weren't those restrictions on him anyway. He's 37 years old. It means that sort of champion generation who won in Australia with Ashwin, with Kohli, with Rohit, with Pujara, they've all made way, and the new gen is officially in place. They were effectively, but there's something. The formalities still mean something.
Yeah, of course I was sad about this. I was, as you, Geoff, egging on the comeback. I interviewed him a couple of years ago, probably 2 years ago to the week. I know it was August 23, about the prospective comeback and what he needed to do, and the runs he'd scored in domestic cricket, both in the Ranji Trophy and, of course, in the county championship with Sussex. And he did everything that was needed of him. They just wouldn't pick him. There was a certain point after he passed his 100th Test match, which you and I covered in the India series earlier that year. They just didn't go back to him. And you're spot on. He would have been far more use in the middle than he would have been in the Sony commentary box and the TMS commentary box that he was during this series. They should have called him up. It wouldn't have been without precedent to have done something like that. But no, not to be. An extraordinary record taken as a whole. There's some really good sort of in the weed stats that Cricinfo did, which I wanted to share with you here, Geoff. But the threshold one is that nearly 7,200 runs in 103 Test matches, 6,500 of those at number 3, so only behind Dravid for Indian number 3s, which stands out given how challenging batting number 3 often is. He faced the 5th most balls in Test cricket across his 13-year span. He was dismissed only once every 98 deliveries, so that's the 5th best ever for players over 5,000 Test runs. You know, a strike rate of just 37
that's
in Australia.
Almost the Bradman of Cowan tons.
Yeah,
to fall just short of the 100 ball mark.
Considered that, the old cow and ton, the 100 balls faced. But yeah, 98 on average per dismissal. I love that his strike rate in Australia was only 37, but he faced 2,657 balls in Australia, an average of 127 deliveries per dismissal when playing in Australia. And that's the best in Australia for over 40 years by that measure. So when you consider the way that Test cricket sped up, balls faced per dismissal, he's the best for 40 years. Okay. So, you can selectively carve stats up as you wish, but there's a theme here. He was so bloody difficult to get out. He did things his way on his terms, and those 521 runs that he got in the 2018-19 series, those 3 centuries, Adelaide to get them going, then in Melbourne and Sydney as well. They were remarkable innings in the way he was able to suppress that Aussie attack and to be the standard bearer. And he very much played a big role in them winning in 2021 as well. He was already on the decline by then. Like statistically, there's 2 chunks to his career, the bit where he's averaging in the 50s and the bit when he's averaging in the 30s. Well, early 21 in Sydney and Brisbane, we're well into the second bit, yet, can you ever forget, his 2 slowest half centuries were in the draw at Sydney and in the win at Brisbane. And that visceral experience of watching him wear blow after blow on the body in that first session of the final day at Brisbane, which was the foundation which permitted all the others to come after him and lay into the Australian bowlers.
Because it's Rishabh batting with him while Pujara's doing that at Brisbane that gives Rishabh the stability that he's got.
And Shubman.
He's got somebody else.
And Shubman before lunch that day, it was Pujara with him as well. Like the guys, we remember the heroes of that day being the guys who scored quickly, but none of that's possible without Pujara. I remember that night you and I spending probably quarter of an hour on the podcast just loving up on what he had done and the sacrifices that he had physically made that day. He's one of my all-time favourite Test cricketers. I mean, everyone knows that. We've banged on about him for years. But I'm sad it's over, but I'm very, very glad it happened.
Very glad it happened. And you were, I can tell people behind the curtain, you were talking about this in Scotland last week about 66 first-class hundreds for Pujara. You were saying he could still do it. He could still do it. It would take a mighty effort from here to produce another third, 50% again of what he's already done in his career to get there with 37 already in the age box. But possible.
37 years young, fit bloke. Saw him recently, fit bloke. Loves playing over here. I can't see him retiring from the Ranji Trophy. There'll be broadcast dollars to be earned for him, but he might be one of the last players who conceivably could do it. And when I asked him about it in that interview a couple of years ago, he didn't know what I was talking about. He wasn't aware of it being that wasn't on his radar at all. But it might be now that he's only a domestic cricketer. He could conceivably play all 14 rounds in the championship for, 5-6 years longer, 6-7 years. And if he played, they don't play as much Ranji Trophy as that. But if he were banking, 20-something first-class games for 7 years, it's a lot to ask. But if he got close, if he got to 80-odd or 85, he might go, well, it's worth a crack here. I don't know. Don't completely rule it out. He's a determined guy.
He needs a Sangakkara season.
He does.
He needs like a
9.
8 or 9 ton season somewhere to give him the nitro boost because that's a lot. If he's got 66 in, about 17 years or so, 18 years, I'm assuming he debuted probably late teens. early 20s. Well, it's a lot to get another 34 of them. But, you never say never. You can say that Ashwin is done in the IPL. Now, this is interesting. There were various of those kind of Indian political stories about who was annoyed with who about what and what he was being allowed to do at the IPL at Chennai, and how he'd been used at Chennai, and that there were disagreements and dissatisfactions in various directions. But he's bailed out. He's done. He started at Chennai. He ended at Chennai. But what it means is that he gets to bugger off and explore the rest of the world. Basically, Ravichandran Ashwin can now be in a polyamorous relationship with world cricket, having previously been in a monogamous relationship with Indian cricket. His frontiers have opened up. He can go and play for everybody else in the world, every other league. He can go and taste the fruit that until now was beyond his reach, because obviously as an Indian contracted player, that board won't let you play for anybody else because they don't want to dilute their intellectual property. But now he can go and play Caribbean Premier League. He could come and play in the Big Bash. Imagine a whole season of Ashwin in the Big Bash. Who's he turning out for? Does he have a Brisbane vibe? Does he have an Adelaide? Maybe a Strikers. I could see him as a Strikers player, cerebral, bringing intellect back to the game. The possibilities are there for Ashwin, who has closed one door but opened 20 others.
I remember a bloke I sat on a committee with many years ago. I'm not sure if it's his line or whether he stole it from somewhere else. If you want to have influence in Sydney, set up a dinner party. If you want influence in Melbourne, start a magazine. So Ashwin's the more likely to start a magazine. So maybe it's Melbourne. Melbourne's the ground where he let that ball go. Last ball of a T20 match against Pakistan. Who on earth leaves a ball go last ball of a T20? But he had the presence of mind to realise it was going to be a wide.
Marty Guptill should have let it go in the 2019 World Cup final. If he'd moved his foot about a centimetre, that ball from Archer's going past the legs.
Right, yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to remember what you're referring to.
The last ball of the Super Over
would have
been a wide. It would have been scores level, and they would have needed one.
True.
Just saying.
But Ashwin is a T20 cricketer. He's won the IPL twice, right? Journeyman, 5 clubs and so on, but won the IPL twice, mostly identifiable.
At 5 clubs.
True.
Kohli has played at 5 clubs.
Good point. But he's been around the traps, is what I'm saying, I guess, across the journey of the tournament. And it's Kohli it's Ashwin after all, who came up with that great bit about the perfectly constructed T20 over is 6 well bowled bad balls. So he's a thinker. He's mostly linked to red ball cricket, but because of the way his brain works, he's always had a lot to say about the short forms as well. I didn't realise that might be part of the incentive for him to finish in the IPL, to broaden his cricketing horizons and play elsewhere. That hadn't clocked for me. But that'd be a terrific get for the Big Bash, especially if they could get someone like Ashwin in. They've had some issues with attendances in the last few years compared to the glory days of 2015 to 2017. Throw an Ashwin into the mix, no matter who he plays for, there'll be many more people coming through the gate. So I'm sure CA are 1 or 2 steps ahead on that front.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it that there's been control over your career. That the BCCI really underlined the control in the Board of Control for Cricket in India when it comes to their players, particularly. So this is a possibility to break free.
And just on that, the BCCI vice president's been quoted extensively in the media the last couple of days. There's been all of these rumours circulating and swirling that Kohli and Rohit were going to do a farewell tour of Australia, as in they were going to play these one-dayers and pull out and go, that's them done from international. And, that's not a wild idea, right?
Not crazy.
But he's like, and the proposition was that either they'd retire or they would be retired off. They'd be like, okay, that's enough, boys, you're done.
Right.
But he's like, no, there's no way they are being retired off. So, it does really, really feel like that 27 World Cup is what they are pushing for. Of course, we've speculated to that effect before. It makes sense. But if there's no farewell tour, well, there'll be no goodbye for either of them. And imagine them getting the perfect one-day farewell with a World Cup win in that format, having enjoyed exactly the same thing in Barbados 14, 15 months ago in the T20 format of the game. It would be irresistible for both of them. A fair bit of water's got to go under the bridge. That World Cup isn't in 5 minutes. It's 26 months away. Like, it's a fairly decent journey away, but they won't be playing a lot of cricket, right? I mean, Kohli will play the IPL and the occasional one day of the India. India play nowhere near as many one days as they used to. Nobody does. No. So he might play 10, 12 one days and 15, 16 at most IPL games. That's nowhere near the workload and the wear and tear on his body that he's had in the past, and the same goes with Rohit. So it may well be that they can build themselves perfectly up for the last hurrah in South Africa.
The peculiarity of this is how is it possible to stay at the top level? I mean, that T20 World Cup was barely 6 months. What was it, 8 months after the 50 over World Cup?
Yes.
So you're going, okay, you've had your big farewell in the T20 edition. Now you're going to wait 3 years until you play the World Cup in the other format while having retired from everything else. Like, name any other singularly professional 50 over internationally contracted cricketer in the world. Like, it's an absurd proposition. I think for any other country, it would be an absurd proposition to say, I've retired from both the shortest format and the longest format, keep me on in the ODIs, which means you keep getting a national contract, presumably. Like, what board is gonna lay out 3 years worth of national contracts for an ODI specialist?
I'll counter that by saying that if we're being ruthless, who are India's best 2 one-day players? You know what I mean? Like, if you're being completely ruthless about it, who are their 2 most effective players? It's probably those 2. But were either of them credibly getting a game in the T20 squad anymore? Maybe not. Well, I don't know. I'm not as au fait with the internals of Indian T20 cricket, but there is an argument that the T20 side, another World Cup next year, we're thinking ahead. And were they in the best Test 11? Well, I think we've both argued that, sadly, because we both wanted it, but they both had reached a point where they weren't in the best Test 11. So if you're being thoroughly ruthless about there being 3 discrete formats, maybe this is fair. It's just weird. We're just not used to it, right? Because in other countries, it wouldn't. Yeah. Or with other players maybe who are less well known, it may not be. Like, David Milan kind of became that with England for a while, didn't he? But it was less. He was less prominent, so we didn't talk about it quite so much.
Right, and it was more ad hoc, and he'd play a bit of T20 here and there. But to be formally retired from the 2 formats that matter the most, and to be a specialist in the obscure format is a strange one.
But the World Cup's not obscure, but the World Cup remains the biggest global event, doesn't it? So it's the format that's maybe the lowest cachet, like day to day. But when the World Cup comes along, it's the highest profile tournament of the 4-year cycle. So I can see both sides of this.
Yeah, from a personal level, like, I would like nothing more than to see Kohli come out in 2 years' time and dominate a World Cup. Like, that would be great to watch. I wonder whether it's possible to stay sharp, to stay at to have the kind of edge that you need to have for high-level international cricket and to face high-level international bowling when you're not playing it otherwise. Like, yes, you're playing the IPL and that's all well and good, but that the sides that you're up against might have 1 or 2 really top level quicks in their team. Like, I don't know, an Anurag Nortje type, like someone who's bowling hostile, who's bowling pace. If you're not facing that because you're playing domestic cricket here and there and you're ad hocing, can you actually come into that national side and be at the level required when you're not being tested in the furnace sort of week in, week out to face that kind of intensity? And I think you saw things like that with Dhoni over the last couple of years, where he'd play the IPL but then wouldn't play cricket the rest of the year, and his returns were obviously diminishing over the last few seasons, and there was a point where it became a bit of a joke, really, that they were sending him out to bat at number 8 or 9 or whatever it was, and he was there to be a name. I don't think that's the case with these 2 yet, but I think it could be in a couple of years' time. I wonder whether they'll be able to have the competitive edge to actually be able to reach that level in 2027 after all that other time out.
And just on Dhoni, I'm not sure whether it was said tongue-in-cheek or a throwaway comment, but he's made reference to potentially, did he say playing till he was 50 or something? There was some report a couple of weeks ago. I'm sort of feeling...
paying him. They keep paying him to bat at 9, and if he can visit with Maharaja of his anagram and just bat 10 and do bugger all, well, why not keep taking the check?
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, I've been that's how I've been interpreting Jack Gunston. I want Jack Gunston to play till he's 50. All Australian Jack Gunston tonight, by the way. All Australian Jack Gunston. I'm just chuffed with that. Anyway, there are some athletes who defy age and defy time, and Dhoni has certainly been that in his own way. Geoff, what has not been denied is the Indian government and their crackdown on Dream 11. Precisely, it's around real money gaming. If you've been following this for years, can you perhaps the first thing you should do, explain where Dream 11 fits in and what they do relative to what was legal in India and now what this act of the Parliament will now not be legal, and thus the unravelling of the various commercial arrangements. So I think sometimes we, as people from countries where gambling is just normal, this doesn't quite clock.
Yeah, broadly speaking, gambling or sports betting was illegal generally, and then apps like this developed a workaround with fantasy leagues where they could, you're picking your fantasy leagues, you're racking up points or whatever the sort of internal system is, but ultimately you can put in real money to be able to sort of stake. To put your team into a competition to then try to win real money. So at some point, real money's going in and real money's coming out, and it's not all fake fantasy stuff. So that was a loophole that they were able to use. That loophole's been closed by the Indian Parliament to say that counts under the betting sort of umbrella, and so that's no longer allowed. What that means is that that's almost all of Dream 11's revenue. And now Dream 11 is a massive operation. Like, they've got hundreds and hundreds of staff. They rake in billions per year. They're on the Indian shirts as the sponsor. There's this kind of irony that initially part of the reason Sourav Ganguly got Julius Caesared as BCCI boss was because he did an ad for Dream 11. And at that time, Dream 11 was considered sort of déclassé by the rest of the Indian management. They decided that was beneath the dignity of a BCCI president, and that they shouldn't be involved in this unofficial non-gambling sort of stuff. Fast forward a few years later, and Dream 11's on the front of the shirts and paying the bills for the BCCI. So the BCCI management got over that particular moral position pretty quickly when
how
the
these
cash
things
came through.
I was going to say, funny how these things can be, how there can be certain pivots. On where the moral compass can what direction it can point depending on how many dollars are thrown at you.
When they were giving money to Sourav, that was bad, but when they were giving money to me, that became good. So that's fundamentally how that
is this the bit when I say that if we wanted to pal up with one of these websites for the final word, we could have done so like several times over the years, but we've always said no because we've always considered it to be gaming money, and thus we've not had any interest in it, as we don't for any other sports betting or crypto or any other bullshit like that. So if you want to be a partner of the final word, you can be sure you'll be doing so without being linked to any of them. Adam at finalwordcricket.com. Get in touch. Let's do a deal around the Ashes. Sorry, please go on.
Yeah,
Geoff,
if you're not a scammer who's looking to milk money off people who can't afford to lose it, then that's great. We'd like to speak to you. So Dream 11's become massive. They also put a huge amount of money into the European Cricket Network. So which wasn't exactly sponsorship, but it was like grants to clubs and smaller chunks of money, but that allowed much smaller clubs to be able to flourish. So that's potentially tanked that entire project, which is pretty sad in the end. So there's a swings and roundabouts thing where you go, well, from my perspective, the company making this money isn't doing it ethically, but at least some of that money went towards something good that did help develop the game. And I can understand that argument, even if I don't necessarily agree that that's the way that things should be funded. Certainly easier to fund things that way. So they're going to. So Dream 11 is saying that they're going to pivot to a different business model, and they're going to try to use other things like their fan websites and streaming and stuff like that to make their money. But I suspect they'll probably also be lobbying very, very hard in India to try to get those rules changed again down the track.
Yeah, I just want to say about the European Cricket Network, like, this is genuinely sad. Like, this is the knock-on from a cricket perspective. I don't want to get into we've already done what the Dream 11 thing constitutes, but if you strip that out and focus on the cricket bit here, 800 teams and 10,000 players have been involved in that European Cricket Network, much of that since the pandemic. I mean, we all learnt more about it through Pavel Florin from Romania all those years ago when that was on telly, when there was no other cricket in the world. We interviewed Dan Weston at the time, who's such an important part of that European story. This competition has been a huge part of that story, and he said that it's a devastating blow, and it risks pushing European cricket back 20 years, and it may never regain that momentum, is what he's been quoted as saying by the BBC. Yeah, it's that's the challenge. Organisations have been heavily reliant upon Dream 11, knowing, presumably, eyes wide open, that there was a risk this would happen one day. and not being able to diversify their risk with other corporate clients or whatever they need to do.
I think the assumption was that Dream 11 was so big that
Too big
they'd
to
be
fail.
able to have enough influence in India to get away with it in the way that things like Uber and so on were technically illegal in a lot of places where they operated for the first few years, but became too successful to be denied eventually. And it was more that legislature adapted to accommodate the companies that were breaking the rules rather than the other way around. We'll take a break before we talk about the Women's World Cup that's coming up, some of the interesting off-field things going on there, other bits and pieces, the domestic cricket in England and so on. Before that break, NordVPN, our very good friends in the VPN business. If you're travelling to India for the Women's World Cup, well, you might not know where the game is. You might not be able to get a ticket, but you will be able to at least use your VPN to log in to somewhere and watch the game on TV from another country. Once, because they haven't found a way to ban that yet.
We did some final word planning day work earlier this week, Geoff, and we met with our friends at the Sports Social Podcast Network, and we reiterated to them that we use our NordVPNs pretty much every day of our lives due to the business that we're in. So I had a look on the website before today. You get the extra 4 months by signing up through our offer code. 8,100 servers in over 100 countries. 10 devices.
They cracked the 8,000 mark. They were at 6,000 last time I looked.
8,100 servers over 100 countries and 10 devices for one account. So I know now, I think everybody I've ever met in cricket in the UK is out at the Ashes this year. Feels like every game I play, there's another person who's saying, "Oh, catch you at Melbourne, catch you at Adelaide," which I'm really looking forward to, showing a lot of people through, I guess, commentary boxes and that type of thing. But as they are all packing their passports and don't forget your toothbrush. Don't forget your NordVPN.
Don't forget your VPN.
Don't forget your NordVPN.com/TFW.
It doesn't matter which country you're in.
NordVPN.com/TFW. I'm going to say it again. That is what you need to make sure that when you're in Oz or when you're somewhere else at the back of the summer.
Doesn't matter. Whichever country we've gone to, I've needed it for one of the other countries that I'm not in. If you're in the UK, you need it to be out of the UK. If you're in Europe, you need it to be in Australia. If you're in Australia, you need it to be in England. On and on it goes. And the other thing I really like is they give you 10 devices. 10. So they're not one of these stingy, like, oh, well, you're on holiday and you're trying to log into your HBO or whatever it is, but it's like, oh, you're already watching this at home. No, I'm not watching it at home. I'm not at home. I'm at my friend's house, but I really want to watch Hacks. And so I'm trying to log in and it's like, no, you can only have 2 devices. No, you get 10. So you can do your computer, you can do your phone, you can do your kids' laptops, you can do your wife's computer, you can do your husband's phone, whatever. Everybody, your friend who comes to visit, you can tap them into it. Oh, you can't load anything because you're on holiday in Portugal for a week. Just, here's the VPN. You can look after everybody in a household sense. Get on board. They're the best.
NordVPN.com/TFW. Thanks for their ongoing support of our show. As you say, back in a sec, heaps to come in segment 3.
It is the final word. It's season 18. It's episode 30. The Women's World Cup is coming up in just over a month. We'll, of course, be doing daily shows, full daily coverage. If you want to get involved with that as a sponsor, info@finalwordcricket.com. England squad first up. This became a story during the week with Kate Cross being left out of this squad in a way that it probably wouldn't have if Kate Cross didn't have a podcast where she could talk about that. But it was really interesting insight to hear at length from a player on the impact of being left out of a big tournament that you desperately want to be part of, and the cruelties and vicissitudes of being a professional player. But normally if you hear from that player, you get 90 seconds from them in a press conference saying, yeah, very disappointed, et cetera, et cetera. But actually getting, it wasn't like a poor me situation, but it was interesting to get a broader understanding of who somebody is and how those decisions affect.
Yeah, it's a very relatable cricketing experience, losing your spot in the pecking order. So on a personal level, you can feel the pain and the hurt that Kate's feeling at the moment. And hearing her talk to Alex about it on their No Balls podcast, it was always going to be a tough listen for anyone that's got any affection towards Kate. Of course, we do as someone who's been on our program in the past and worked with her as you have as well. And she's a belter, and you want her to continue to have the career she's had. But the challenge she was always going to have was that if she fell out of the top three, at least the perception that she's out of the top three, then she wasn't going, because Nat Sciver-Brunt as captain's going to bowl. I know she's not bowling yet, but the plan is for her to bowl. They're going to be playing 3.5 spinners in every game. It's India, Sri Lanka World Cup. They're going to be playing one outright seamer, and they've got Em Arlett, they've got Lauren Bell, and they've got Lauren Filer. That's right, as the other seamer. The bit that she fell out of favour during the home summer, where she hasn't had the best 50 over home summer domestically or internationally, and she lost her spot in the England team for what became a T20 game. So there was a game that got reduced to 20 overs against India. They shuffled her out of the team for that, and then she didn't play in the last game that was washed out. So there was some version of that. So it's tricky, given that she started the series there as England's number one, and now she has fallen out of the top three. But
vice captain 5 minutes ago.
Vice captain 5 minutes ago. But that kind of happens with fast bowling groups sometimes. Like, you can go from being number one to out of the team. We see it in all sorts of cricket all of the time. So it's not like as clear cut. I don't think Kate would say this either. It's not as clear cut as it's an absolute shambles that she's been left out. If this World Cup were anywhere but India, she'd be in it. But it's more that the probability, they need the extra spin depth. They need the extra tweakers there, because ultimately that's the majority of the overs being bowled in any one-day international in that part of the world in women's cricket. It's always going to be, like I say, maybe up to 40 overs of spin. And obviously she's doing something very different to that.
And a little while ago, you wouldn't have expected that Em Arlett would be ahead of her in the pecking order, but
there you go.
The way that she's bowled recently.
Exactly.
And then somebody like Filer, I think you have to have that option in a squad, because pace through the air.
That's right.
If you're likely to be on slower pitches, that's the kind of thing that can make all the difference, and having that contrast. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of surfaces they get, because it's very much off Broadway, this World Cup. So we've had the venue change. They were going to play at Bangalore at the Chinnaswamy. That was going to be the highest profile venue. That's been dumped because of the crowd crush they had there after the IPL, where a number of people were killed. And as part of the repercussions for that, they're not allowed to stage events there for the time being. That happened months ago, and you would have thought, I think changing the venue in that circumstance, you can understand why that might happen. It's the lack of flagging it. Because there obviously would have been arguments going back and forth, and there probably would have been lawyers involved on every side, and vested interest on every side. There would have been people who wanted the games to stay in Bangalore. There would have been people who wanted them to move. I think they could have done a much better job of at least signalling that this was likely to happen. But the knock-on effect is that other games have now been moved in terms of which venue they're going to be at. So the other venues are consistent, but they were never high-profile venues anyway. So a bunch of the games will be in Colombo, because Pakistan can't go to India, so the games involving Pakistan are being played in Colombo. The other centres are Guwahati, Visakhapatnam, and Indore. I mean, Indore is somewhere with a very storied history in Indian cricket, but it's not a big part of the present of Indian cricket. And to have this lack of clarity in terms of venues, then to have the same problems with tickets that you always have at events hosted in India where tickets are not available. And we've seen this. 2016, we didn't get venues until a few weeks ahead of time, and then venues were changed during the tournament as well in that T20 World Cup. It's happened at every ICC event in India. It's just accepted as the norm that you don't get venues, you don't get dates, things get moved, and that doesn't matter. Like the match attending public is irrelevant. They're not. There is no consideration given to them at all. And I know it's old news in a way. It's the same story every time, and we keep repeating it every time, but it should not be the norm. It should not be acceptable that you can't be a punter who can plan to go to a game and who can book travel to go to a game without the risk that you're going to have the rug pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah, well, everything you said then, and more really. There was reporting in The Guardian this week about fans trying to come to India for it, but they've got, what hope have you got? And it wouldn't be acceptable in any other country, of course, that just gets waved away because it's India, and what accountability is there? Zero. So this is just accepted. It's the price of doing business, and it's the price of these major events being held in India. I think at the moment, like this, that, oh, well, such is life. The same thing happened, as you say, in the 23 Men's World Cup. And we saw that with the fairly ordinary attendances for the vast majority of the tournament, including the very first game, which was a shambles with the number of people who were there for the beginning.
More than ordinary. I
Yeah.
reckon people remember the final and they go, well, the final was full. Yeah, the final was
80,000 people at the finals, terrific, right? Everybody loves the fact that I think it was the second biggest World Cup final ever. They were the second biggest attendance after Melbourne 2015.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific. They got filling out an 80,000 seater is a big deal, right? It's no one undersells that, but that's not the full picture of a World Cup. Like the dynamism of a World Cup isn't defined by the final when the host country is playing.
Or the home fans, or that's the home fans following the home team. So you look at that. I mean, that game, so many of the people, I would love to have an actual breakdown of it, because almost every Indian supporter I met who was attending that game lived outside of India. They were coming in from the US or from the UK or from Australia, because they were the ones who had the income to shell out a couple of grand for those tickets. But every other game, there's Australia playing South Africa in Lucknow or whatever it was, there were no Australian supporters travelling, because you couldn't travel, because you didn't know that the game would actually be on where it was supposed to be played. And even if it was, you couldn't get a ticket. And it's down to the point where, for people like you and me, part of the reason we're not there is because as freelancers, we can't pay the money to book everything we need to book to go to the tournament, because it will almost certainly be changed. And then suddenly you're having to shell out again over the odds at the last minute to try to cancel bookings, amend things, book new things, as we had to do during the Test series when the game shifted from Dharamshala to indoor. So it is just accepted and waved away, but it shouldn't be acceptable. Like in any reasonable sport, it wouldn't be acceptable that the country that gets every second global tournament also makes a balls up of that tournament every single time, and there are no repercussions for it.
It's being described in the marketing materials as the biggest women's event ever. And look, I'm sure on the basis of TV numbers it'll end up being that. I hope it is. It'd be terrific if it was. But the actual bums on seats question at venues that they're not in the major population centres. I know that population
they're second-tier venues in terms of profile and in terms of history and in terms of capacity. And you can't say this is going to be the biggest women's tournament ever, and it's not being played in Kolkata, it's not being played in Chennai, it's not being played in Delhi, it's not being played in Bangalore, and until 5 minutes ago it wasn't being played in Mumbai or near Mumbai, and it's still not being played at the major grounds in Mumbai. It'll be in Navi Mumbai, which is the kind of satellite city.
Yeah, so and Navi Mumbai is a ground that's got women's. Navi Mumbai's got a claim on being a women's venue because it's held a lot of women's cricket before. But why wasn't it in the original five? You know what I mean? Like, why did it take this pivot?
But it also held women's cricket when women's cricket was much lower profile. So you should be graduating away from that ground. You should be moving on from that. It's like, why wouldn't you be playing it at the major stadiums, the ones that have the recognition, when this is supposed to be the global event? I'm all for growing the game and spreading the game. We make that argument. Fine. Do that when India are playing a 7-match bilateral series. Do that when the Indian women's teams are playing some ODIs. Play that game in Guwahati, play that game in Vizag. But it's a lie. You're being told a lie with a very straight face, which is self-evident that it's a lie by the very content of the lie itself. You cannot say that this is the biggest tournament, or that you treat this tournament with respect when you're scheduling it at places that automatically show that that's not the case.
I neglected to say this before when talking about England, just to pivot back and before we go to the next topic, but Kate Cross might be a bit unlucky to not be in the first three England quick side. That's a subjective, debatable thing. Bloody hell, Alice Davison-Richards is stiff. She's her last two one-day knocks, 53 and 44 in that series against India, averaging 58 in list A cricket this year, so domestic cricket, with a ton and 3 other scores above 50. Averaged, I think, 50-odd last year as well. I understand that Heather Knight's coming back, and that's great that Heather Knight's back from her serious hamstring tear. It was worse than that, with the tendons torn to shreds, and she's missed an entire season. And Heather Knight playing for England, a no-brainer for all the obvious reasons, as the new, I guess, the senior pro, right, in that dressing room. But I did feel for Alice, and yeah, you could say that she's been on our show and we back her in, and we do. But still, just wanted to note for the record that she's the real, she's the hardest luck story, I think, not to make the final 15 for England. Yeah,
and you could look at Danny White-Hodge over a long career with, a few highlights, but a lot of pretty modest returns over that period as well, who, there might be an argument there. Anyway, what have we got?
Well, I just want to say again, every single day of that tournament, we're making the commitment to be every single day. We're going to have people out there working with the final word. You'll be involved. I'll be involved. Our usual, band of co-hosts will be involved, but we're going to be there on location for as many games as we can, with final word correspondence, doing daily eps. It's going to be quite a big operation for us behind the scenes. So, Adam at finalwordcricket.com to get involved. It's going to be a really, really fun series to cover. There's global tournaments, always are. And the perfect
or sign up on Patreon if you if you love the women's game and you want to help us cover it. Patreon.com/thefinalword. You can get involved there.
A nice way to either do that for the first time or as a corporate commercial partner, sort of taste test, see what it feels like. Join us for 30 days. If you like it, join us for 30 years. We'll see. Geoff, we're at the business end of the 100.
Yep.
I didn't arrange this. I'm getting there. So I didn't arrange to organise a summary of the 100 from Daniel this week. I loved his voice note last week. I will tell you that with one game to go in the women's tournament, the Southern Brave play in that last game. They've already qualified to the final. They are 7-0. And the eliminator will be played between the Northern Superchargers and the London Spirit, who made the postseason last year as well. And yes, the Welsh Fire are down the bottom and playing the Brave today. And in the men's side of the draw, which of course I managed to have misplaced, I'll come back to in a moment. I can't tell you who's where at the moment. I did have the ladder. I promise you, I did take it down. Where are we? Here we go. In the men, the Oval Invincibles are through to the final. They've played all 8 games. And the Trent Rockets play the Superchargers in the second versus third. So first goes straight through, second place third, day before. It's called the Eliminator. Trent Rockets based at Trent Bridge and the Northern Superchargers based at Leeds. And there's one game left in the group stage in that as well. So that's the overall. But Geoff, you went, and I just want to drill down on this. You went with your partner, who's not a cricket person, right? Because she's not from a cricket country traditionally. And that's who the audience is for this, originally non-cricket people. How did you guys interpret the day? I haven't spoken to you about this, but give me a run through of how she interpreted it and what was it like?
Had a good time. It's the first 100 game I've watched, not only that I've been to, but that I've actually watched. Yeah, I think I've watched 5 minutes or so of the odd game that's been on a TV somewhere or other. But and it's also the first time I think I've used a ticket to go into a cricket ground in about 15 years, which was quaint in and of itself. But yeah, friend had a couple of spare tickets, and we'd been out for the afternoon at the Notting Hill Carnival, which was absolute chaos, which was good fun. Tell you what, having toured the Caribbean recently helped sort of have the mood, have the vibe, have the understanding of every speaker stack is going to be turned up to its absolute loudest possible volume. Yes. You won't be able to hear anything. There'll be a lot of guys yelling over the top of songs because that's apparently a popular thing. But it was big party time in the streets. And then it was like, okay, well, we've had enough of this. Let's bail out of here. Let's get the tube over to Kennington. It was a great night. It was almost a sellout. I think it was the London Derby. So it was the Lord's team versus the other team, who I think they had the sort of green and pink vibe going on. So they ended up getting called the Watermelons. The Watermelons versus the Veruca Salts was how it was interpreted by non-cricket people who were in attendance with me. But they had a good time because it was short and it was showy, and there were signs to wave around and times to jump up and down, and oh look, that ball's got hit in the air, is he going to catch it? He's running, is he going to, he did catch it, hey, that kind of thing. So I think it works, and I think there is that argument that, hey, look, they've made something that worked, which is good, and I always come back to my same argument, which is they could have done the same thing with an elite level T20 competition, and had the same effect, but whatever, that's already happened, and it'll be a T20 competition soon enough. So I had a very enjoyable early evening out, and it was all done by about 9 o'clock, and you could go home. So that part was nice, rather than being at an IPL game that finishes at 1:30 in the morning.
It'll feel more like the IPL next year when Will McPherson had the yarn this week that it's officially going to be MI London for the Oval team next year, which is a little bit but inevitable. So, and it will be a T20 comp. I'm not sure whether that's next year or the year after, but it'll be what is expected in the fullness of time. Whilst I imagine them trying to retain the light touch that you experienced the other night, and the sort of going to the cricket, but it feeling a bit different to a normal game. I watched the game on telly. I've not watched any this season either. I've been to one game a couple of years ago, but I watched the Edgbaston game on Friday night, where Steve Smith was batting in a chase that was fairly comfortable. And what stood out to me is that, what do you think about when you think about Edgbaston, right? You think about loud, think about the atmosphere, and it's all pumping there, right? Nothing doing. It was very chilled. It was very, and maybe that was match situation, but it didn't have that energy. Right. And I think that's to do with the tribalism question. This is the whole thing about them trying to, over time, inject a degree of tribalism, which isn't there at the moment. So that's one of the challenges. Richard Gould, in that briefing that we did the other week.
What was that?
I don't know. It didn't. Hard to tell from the telly. It probably was being Friday night. Would have been. Would have done okay numbers. I'm sure, but it didn't have that oomph. That's right. Certain. It didn't come through the TV as having any oomph to it either. But like Richard Gould in that briefing I went to the other week was pretty honest in saying I don't really know what the journey is at the moment for 100 fans becoming international fans. I don't have, or maybe they have the data. Maybe it's such a small number of people.
He said they hadn't done the research.
He was kind of. I sort of felt for him a bit there, because it wasn't like he was more like he wasn't across it, and it got reported as. It was one of those ones where he was playing for time in the answer, but it got reported as they hadn't done it. Either way, even if they have done the work, it would be such a small number, because if you're paying,
I think that was the upshot, is that they hadn't done that.
Right.
They haven't done that modelling. So then the question is, why haven't they done that?
Well,
modelling?
even if they have, let's pretend they have. It can't be much of a number, because you get into the 100 for like a tenner or something, and to get to a test match, the opening day. Well, not the opening day. To get to a test match in London this season, I think the cheapest ticket was 130 quid or something. It might have been a bit less at the Oval, sorry, but certainly at Lord's, and the other venues are getting to that level as well. It's wildly expensive around the country for Test cricket. So going on a journey from being a new person, like the guys you were with the other night, and going, oh, that was a fun thing, and then migrating to watching, Joe Root make 100, especially if you fold more than just one person, like, I don't know, a partner and kids or something. Oh, why would you? You'd be mad. It'd be a crazy thing to do if you're finding the sport to invest in that way.
If it's £150, it's like you can buy your tickets for All Point Cease for less than that. You can go and see a full day of like world class music. You can buy 150 quid. You can buy 2 tickets to Les Mis and go to the West End and watch a show. Like there is so much that you can do with that kind of incredible demand of spending to
look,
to sit there and watch it. And you're watching some of the best cricketers in the world. Fine, great, but a day of Test cricket isn't necessarily, like, not every day is a thrilling day. And if you get the quiet day 3 where not a great deal happens, and then there's a bit of rain, and then they only bowl 60 odd overs and all the rest of it, like, have you really? Like, they price things in the wrong tier, but. We've been saying this for years.
It's a free market, right? So I get that the tickets always sell in England, so they're entitled to do what they want. So the market ultimately dictates the price.
They sell to rich people who go as a status thing.
And also because the ground's capacities are small. If they have bigger capacities, it wouldn't be such an issue. So if they're going to have 100 fans, to the extent they exist, rocking up and going on that journey to being Test fans, they're going to have to find a way of subsidising tickets or quarantining a percentage of Test tickets for them. It's the only way it can work. Because the market,
something that says if you've bought tickets for 400 games, then you get half price ticket to the Test or something,
or whatever it is. That's the only way. And I can't see any of the organisations that sell, because remember that the ticket selling, it's to the advantage of if you're MCC or if you're the Oval or if you're heading Yorkshire rather or Lancashire or whatever, why would you go about providing that subsidisation? It would have to be done centrally. At some level. So anyway, it's all complex stuff, but I guess my wider point here is that if they want people to go on that journey, if they want it to be a gateway drug in the same way the Big Bash is, because remember, the Big Bash works because you can go to a Big Bash game, then go to a Test match day, and there's a difference in price. I'm not saying that it's dirt cheap to go to an Aussie Test match, but it's the test tickets.
Possible to find a ticket for a $50 or $60
That's
ticket,
right.
which is a 30 quid ticket.
Quite, it's still available because of the supply of tickets.
There are some of them. If you get in early, you can find them.
Yeah. Anyway, another story this week, which I thought you'd like, Geoff. It's cricket being played under domes, which I know you and I, in the early days of the final word, spoke about Biodome and Paulie Shaw.
Probably too much.
It's probably too much. Now, it's not literally that. It's a good thing. It's the former government actually announced this on the way out the door. It's being implemented now by the current government.
Is involved? Yeah. Which of the Baldwins?
Who was the Kylie Minogue was in Biodome, wasn't she? Was Kylie Minogue in it? Have I got that right? Am I remembering the right movie?
Maybe.
I think she was, Why don't you IMDb it while I... So it's not what it sounds like. So this is a building indoor cricket infrastructure that means that cricket can be played to lower the barrier of entry for people playing the game. So there's one in Luton and one in Lancashire to begin. This is primarily in Luton for state school kids. So exactly the people we're talking about here who are kind of priced out of cricket, giving them the chance. In Lancashire, it'll be a lot of disability cricket. Women's cricket will be housed there, like they'll use them as a training base and that type of thing. This is ECB and the government working in tandem. So, watch this space for more of this type of clever investment, and hopefully it'll mean that more people can have the chance to play cricket outside of the types of people who typically play it in this country at the moment.
Kylie Minogue was in Biodome. Yes. I don't know who she's playing, but, as the misadventures of Bud and Doyle, it's one of the Baldwins. Can't remember which one. Can't tell them apart.
That's okay.
Right. So they're going to... Okay, I was very distracted reading about Biodome while you were...
That's okay. Long story short is this is like basically all-weather domes. So it's not like to play games under there per se. It's to provide... It's like just big indoor facilities.
Like those training sort of wedding marquees that they put over the pitches in the winter.
And I think it's big enough. No, I think they're more hard wicket stuff. It's more indoor. Right. But I think the idea is they're big enough to do a lot more than what your traditional indoor schools have been able to do. So it's about the whole idea is making it easier for state school kids to play and making it easier for people who have typically been shut out because cricket can feel exclusionary at times and giving them a way.
Would it be big enough to have some sort of semi-centre wicket,
like in Iceland
situation?
Yeah, this is the Iceland
not
international
like a full
venue.
ground, but like a 30-yard perimeter kind of thing.
I hope so. That would be desirable. Geoff, staying in England to finish the Metrobank Cup, which not the Metro. Yes, it is Metrobank. I nearly second guessed myself on the corporate partner. The One Day Cup, where it's still ticking over. So we know
Mutual
the Mercantile Mutual. That's right. So Worcestershire, Hampshire, Gloucestershire through in Group A, Yorkshire, Somerset, Middlesex in Group B, but just wanted to note that Archie Vaughan has got his first professional 100, which of course will be...
Rules him out for England.
Which will mean
he... Can't get picked for England if you're making professional tons. No. We don't want that.
He'll be there.
Who's setting your ways? Once you're making professional tons, you're a pathways kid,
He's got two scores in the tournament, a 96 and then 109 not out against Northants. That was a couple of days ago. So Archie Vaughan for Perth. Fairly certain he will be fast-tracked and taken and played. So, no, I'm just joking. But Archie Vaughan, good to see him.
Bethel, Vaughan, John Simpson. Who else is coming?
Yeah, they're all on the plane. Hey, and one more thing on England domestic cricket. I really meant to raise this during the Oval Test match, but I wasn't really on the dailies when it was being talked about. Graham Thorpe Day, which is the headbands that were... I'm holding one up to the screen here, that were held up in relation to the charity Mind. Health charity over here. Surrey, just want to note my great friend John Surtees has worked at Surrey forever, whose idea this was. He was involved in the implementation. £1,000 they raised for that charity with the headbands. There's still a few left.
They were kicking around after the 100 game the other night. I saw some people on the tube wearing them.
It's really cool.
Very strong Surrey Oval Thorpe.
And games of cricket I've been playing, people are wearing them on the field, so it's working. There's still a few left at the Oval. Go down to the main desk there to pick up one, and I hope there'll be more. But yeah, it's just a good thing. Like obviously the tragedy of Graham Thorpe's passing, but these charity days, when done well, can be brilliant. And these headbands were outstanding, and I'm looking forward to wearing one myself in the latter part of my season.
Make it happen. Channel the power of terry toweling wrapped around your head. Do the 70s, 80s bit. I watched the old fast bowler competition again the other night on YouTube. Every time it pops up in the recs, I'm like, do I want to watch an ultra slow motion side on angle of Richard Hadley bowling? Yes, I do. Do I want to see Michael Holding, like you get all the old descriptions of Michael Holding bowling and how emotive and florid people are about the style, the run up, the motion, and then you see it in like the full slow motion camera, and you go, "Yep, it was that good."
He was special.
Anyway,
that was the way it was done. The classical side on action, bring it back. It's a bit like the to go back full circle to where we started today. Things that go out of fashion and into fashion again. When I used to go around Camden Market when I was a younger lad, there'd be all sorts of Smiths memorabilia and T-shirts and indie bands of yesteryear and skinny jeans and plimsolls and so on. It's all gone now, but I'm going to keep wearing my skinny jeans and keep wearing those types of shoes, wear my cons and so on, and wait for them to get back in fashion again one day. Might take 10 or 15 years, but I've got the patience for this one. I'm going to see off the kids.
They'll be back. If kids are wearing fat pants again now, then they'll be back. Don't worry.
I hope so.
All right.
That's us done.
Our show.
Yep.
That's been the final word, season 18, episode 30.
We've got story time on the weekend. I just want to say we've got some good stuff coming up on story time this weekend. So don't miss that when it drops on probably Saturday. It will be Saturday. I think we've agreed to that. Will be the next step in the show and some interviews next week. And, all that kind of jazz. We've got a month of kind of, fast and loose. A month of fast and loose. Then we're into the Women's World Cup. It's going to be a really fun time in final word world. So get on board. Oh, and by the way, 19th of September is the next final word game. So I don't know if I've announced that, but it's the final word 11.
No, you haven't.
Playing Oval Dream Boys at the Dulwich Cricket Club. Friday the 19th, 4 p.m. first ball. Our final word 11 is assembled. I think I've got 13 at the moment, but there's a team. We've got a team. It's all good. ODB have got their team as well. It's like an unbelievably fun day and night. Geoff, you played last year. So the game at 4 p.m. so that we get in before it gets dark, and then, credit card goes behind the bar kind of stuff afterwards, and everyone gets fed and everyone has a great time. So if that is you, then please be there. It will be fun.
Good. Do it. You'll find out more about it if you join up on patreon.com/thefinalword, Patreon. That's where you get onto the chat page and all the rest of it, where you can stay updated with final word news and views and help us do what we're doing into the end of the year. All the sponsor links are in the show notes. If anything today piqued your interest on the show, thanks to Maurice Blackburn and New Brew and NordVPN. Right, we're out. Geoff Lemon, Adam Collins. We'll see you next time.